Let's build the ultimate counterspeller in D&D and play as Mr. Aizawa from My Hero Academia. Welcome to D&D Builds, where we have an outlet to make all sorts of ridiculous Dungeons & Dragons characters and stop driving the people in our lives insane with them. My Hero Academia, or if you want to go with the non-English version, Boku No Hero, is filled with plenty of people, heroes, and villains, all with special powers known as quirks. And Mr. Aizawa has a special ability to neutralize anybody else's ability. So we want to go ahead and build that in Dungeons & Dragons. And first things first, we gotta pick a race. He's fairly normal looking for the most part, so we're just gonna grab human and go with a human variant. This allows us to pick up a feat, so the feat we're gonna grab is Mage Slayer. This makes you especially good at combating other magic users, so when a creature casts a spell within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to make a melee weapon attack against that creature. And when you damage a creature that's concentrating on a spell, that creature has disadvantage on saving throws to maintain concentration. And finally, you have advantage on saving throws against spells cast by creatures within 5 feet of you. An additional benefit of being a variant human is that you get to choose one skill, and Mr. Aizawa is really known for his ninja-like style, so we're gonna grab stealth. Then we get to choose a background, and considering he's part of a very particular school, we're gonna treat that like it's a faction and pick Faction Agent from Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. This gives you skills in insight and one non-physical skill. So we'll grab acrobatics because you are pretty nimble and able to hop around pretty well. Then it's time to jump into some stats using point buy from the player's handbook. He's not really known for his strength, so we're going to dump that, but he is pretty nimble, so we're going to bump our dexterity to 14. Then despite being a fairly normal human, he is able to take quite the beating and still survive, so we're going to take our constitution and bump it all the way up to 15. Then our intelligence and our wisdom we're going to bump pretty high because he's a teacher and he's very experienced in pretty much every way. So we'll bump both of these to 13 and then get a +1 to each of them from our race selection, bringing them to 14. And then we have one little point left over thanks to point buy, so we'll go ahead and just throw it into charisma because even though he's not very charismatic, people still seem to love him. Now let's really dive into the build and sort out a starting class. Like I said, we want to build the ultimate counterspeller, and there is a well-known trick to use Jack of all trades as a bard, and you can apply that to when you use the spell Counterspell. This allows you to use half of your proficiency bonus and add it to when you're competing against somebody else's spell with Counterspell. But we don't really have enough charisma to pull off Bard, and there's a better way to be a counterspeller in D&D. Plus, we're definitely going to have to get a bit creative considering his combat style and using that crazy scarf thing. So I have some ideas, and with it, we're going to go with Wizard. At first level of Wizard, you get access to a few weapons, but not a whole lot, and you get saving throws and intelligence and wisdom. Then you get to choose 2 skills, and we're going to grab Arcana so you know that somebody's about to use an ability, and you're a little more ready to counterspell it, and then follow it up with Investigation. Wizards are definitely known for one main thing, and that's spellcasting. They get a heck of a lot of spells they can learn, but I'm not going to make this a 3-hour video, and instead focusing on just the spells that I think would really be useful and fit the theme of Aizawa. You get a few cantrips to start, so I'm going to grab Mage Hand because you can kind of float around that scarf, and just to add to that, pretending we're either using our hands for combat attacks or the scarf for anything when we're in melee. We'll also grab Sapping Sting and Lightning Lure to help grab somebody and pull them in. Granted, that one does lightning damage, but we only have so many cantrips to work with here. As far as first level spells to grab, we're mostly going to focus on enhancing our own abilities. So we want to take Featherfall to avoid taking fall damage, Long Strider to help boost our speed, Jump to be able to jump up really high and act a little more ninja-like, Mage Armor just to have a bit more defense, and you can even play this off as being really good with your scarf to block attacks. And just to add to that, you can add on Shield, which will give you +5 to your armor class for a turn. Then at second level of Wizard, you get to choose an Arcane Tradition, and this is where we're starting to find our way towards becoming the ultimate counterspeller, because we're going to choose the School of Abjuration. Abjuration is usually a very defensive type of magic. Choosing this spell school gives you Abjuration Savant, making it a little easier and cheaper to learn abjuration spells, and you get Arcane Ward. So whenever you cast a spell of the Abjuration school that is at least of first level or higher, you create a magical ward on yourself that lasts until you finish a long rest, which is basically a living shield. And it has hit points equal to twice your wizard level plus your intelligence modifier. So whenever you would take damage, this ward takes damage instead. But it can regain some hit points and help block more attack as you cast more abjuration spells, which essentially heal the shield for a number of hit points equal to twice the spell's level that you cast. Then as we get to 3rd level of Wizard, we get access to 2nd level spell slots, and as far as 2nd level spells, we can play up the whole ninja scarf thing with spells like Hold Person, Rope Trick, and Web, because they all feel thematically appropriate, where it's either you're reaching up and climbing up your scarf, or you're just grabbing people and holding them in place. But the definite spell we want to grab that's really going to come in handy later is Enhance Ability, and I'll dive into why a little later. Then at 4th level of Wizard, you get an ability score improvement, so we're just going to boost up our intelligence by 2 points, which helps all of our wizard stuff, and you get to learn another cantrip. So we'll grab Sword Burst, and you can think of this as just whipping your scarf thing all around you really quickly. Then at 5th level of Wizard, you get access to 3rd level spell slots, and this is where we get one of the most important parts of this build, Counterspell. Using this spell allows you to interrupt a creature in the process of casting another spell. If that spell is of 3rd level or lower, that spell fails automatically and has no effect. But if the spell is 4th level or higher, you get to make an ability check using your spell casting ability. The DC equals 10 plus the spell's level that the enemy is casting. So if they're casting a spell of 5th level, you have to make sure that you roll at least a 15 or higher. And if you do so, that creature's spell fails and has no effect again. This is all about how the dungeon master at your table handles it. Sometimes they'll have you make an arcana check to see if you know what kind of spell the enemy is casting, but other times it's kind of a shot in the dark. So you might have to really rely on just being able to overpower them with this counterspell. You can also upcast Counterspell, so if you cast Counterspell using a higher level spell slot, it automatically blocks the spell as long as the enemy is casting a spell of the same level as you or lower. But if you're at a table that really doesn't let you get any insight as to what your enemy is casting, at least as far as power level, that's why we have that spell, Enhance Ability, of 2nd level. Because remember, you have to make a spell casting ability check, and Enhance Ability allows you to have advantage on intelligence checks, which is what you would use for your counterspell. So if you stack these 2 spells, it's super helpful, but we're not going to stop there, because continuing on with spells you can learn at this level, you definitely want to pick up Dispel Magic because it really fits the theme, as well as Remove Curse, because there are a lot of abilities that do kind of feel more like a curse. And then to boost your own physical abilities and amp up your ninja skills, you're going to want to grab Haste and Non-Detection. Then at 6th level of Wizard, you get another feature from your School of Abjuration, Projected Ward. So now that arcane ward that you have that can block damage, you can actually use your reaction to have your arcane ward block damage against other creatures to help keep the students in your class more safe. Then at 7th level of Wizard, you get access to 4th level spell slot, and to keep with the whole idea of that scarf thing that you have, we're just going to grab Avard's Black Tentacles. Then at 8th level of Wizard, you get another ability score improvement, so we're going to boost up our intelligence again, because that does help all of our wizard stuff, and especially using Counterspell. Then at 9th level of Wizard, we get access to a 5th level spell slot. And to keep with wrapping people up and having some good range, especially considering it's called a Binding Cloth, you're going to grab Hold Monster, Bigby's Hand, and follow it up with Telekinesis, because all of those really seem to fit the theme. Then at 10th level, you get another feature from School of Abjuration, Improved Abjuration. And this is where you far surpass any bard that was going to use Jack of all trades to add half their proficiency bonus to Counterspell, because this feature allows you to add your full proficiency bonus to any ability check that's made as part of casting a spell of the Abjuration School, and that includes Counterspell. So now you can add your proficiency bonus to things like Counterspell and Dispel Magic. Also at this level, you get to learn one more cantrip, and just to help out your defense a bit, we're just going to grab Blade Ward. And then at 11th level of Wizard, you get access to 6th level spell slots. And there's only one spell I really want to grab from this level, and that's Contingency. So now you don't have to waste a whole bunch of spells casting Enhance Ability repeatedly, just in case you lose concentration or the spell's duration runs out, because Contingency allows you to set up particular situations that you would cast a spell automatically. It allows you to cast a spell at the same time as casting Contingency, and that spell doesn't go into effect until something that you state happens. So you could say, I don't want this spell to take effect until I see somebody casting a spell that I would probably cast Counterspell against. The duration of this spell lasts 10 days and you can line up Enhance ability with it. So now you always have advantage whenever you're casting Counterspell and that spell you're trying to Counterspell happens to be of a higher level than what you casted Counterspell at. Then at 12th level of Wizard we get another ability score improvement, so we're going to boost up our intelligence one more time, finally maxing it out, which helps all of our wizard skills, as well as Counterspell whenever we need it. Then at 13th level of Wizard, we get access to a 7th level spell slot. Just to add to our Cloth of Binding and how it just kind of flies around hitting people, we'll go ahead and grab Mordenkainen's Sword. You can move it around as a bonus action and keep whipping people with your scarf, giving you some more substantial combat ability. Then at 14th level, you get another feature from the School of Abjuration, granting you spell resistance. So you have advantage on all saving throws against spells, and you have resistance to all damage against spells. Then at 15th level of Wizard, we get one of the last spells that I really wanted to focus on because we get access to an 8th level spell slot, granting us Anti-Magic Field, really allowing you to completely neutralize other spells and magical abilities in a bit more of an area of effect. Granted, your eyes might get a bit dried out because Aizawa has to look at a creature to neutralize a spell, but that's what you have eye drops for, because you're able to concentrate on this spell for up to an hour. And now I know it's a little late in the build, but I want to do a multi-class. And I know this is a lot to keep track of, so if you want some help following along, feel free to check out my Patreon linked in the description down below, where you can get access to character sheets and more that I build out on D&D Beyond and share with all of my patrons. And a special shout out to my player character patrons Salvador, Kilon, Lumiere97, The Dino21, Yaksha Senpai, and Justin Miller. And going above and beyond them, there's my Dungeon Master level patrons that I go ahead and play D&D with. Devin Happy, Benjamin, Tristan Bennett, GameStake, Heyo, Eric Wade, Michael, and Ramirez Games. Then going above and beyond all of that, there's my patron among patrons, the most epic contributor to my channel, Kilo Kilo. He is my god tier level patron and I cannot thank him enough. But now as far as that multi-class, we're going to be utilizing some of that wisdom, and I was tempted to go with something like a monk because he has that acrobatic combat ability, but he does use his scarf so often and we covered that so well already, so we're going to have a little fun here and go over to cleric. This will grant us access to some new spells, and it really leans into Aizawa's personality, because right at first level of cleric you get to choose a divine domain. So for our cleric subclass, we're going to go with the Domain of Order. This gives you proficiency in the Intimidation skill, and that really works because most of your students are a little intimidated by you. And it also grants you the ability Voice of Authority, commanding your students to do better in battle. So when you cast a spell of first level or higher that targets an ally, that ally can use their reaction to make one weapon attack against a creature that you can see. As far as some of the additional spell casting, I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but I will grab the cantrip Guidance. This allows you to add a d4 to any ability check that you make, so if you don't want to waste a spell slot casting Enhance ability to boost up your counterspell, you can cast Guidance instead, which will grant you an extra d4 to add to your roll. And then just to boost up our general defensive abilities with your scarf, I would follow it up with grabbing Shield of Faith, boosting your armor class by 2. Then at 2nd level of cleric, you get access to Channel Divinity, and thanks to your subclass, you can use this to force creatures within 30 feet of you to make a wisdom saving throw or be charmed by you until the end of your next turn, almost like shouting out to your class and getting all of their attention. Then at 3rd level of cleric, you get access to 2nd level spells from the cleric spell list, and we're just going to grab Spiritual Weapon, so that way you can constantly use your Cloth of Binding, and make this be the weapon floating around and hitting people, at least if you want to use a lower level spell slot, instead of using something like Mordenkainen's Sword. Then we're going to go ahead and grab 4th level of Cleric, just so we can get an ability score improvement, and we'll boost our Wisdom by 2 points, because that helps all of our Cleric stuff, and then we're going to jump back over to Wizard for 1 more level, just because this gives us 1 more ability score improvement right away, and we're actually going to use it to pick up 1 feat just to top off our build. And we'll grab Resilient. We've had that odd number in Constitution for a while, so this will make it slightly more usable, bringing it to 16, and we now have proficiency in Constitution saving throws, so we can concentrate on our spells a little better. So now at 20th level of this build, if you want to counterspell anybody or dispel any magic, even if you don't cast it at a high enough spell slot, you have plus 11 to the roll by default, meaning that even if they cast a 9th level spell, all you have to do is roll an 8. And if you want to improve your odds a little more, on the smaller side, you can cast Guidance repeatedly, just trying to make sure it's always active, granting you an extra D4 to those rolls, or you can use Enhance ability, giving you advantage. And if you roll less than an 8 on an advantaged roll, you should probably take those dice and throw them in your dice jail. Let me know what you think about this build in the comments down below. Personally, I really love My Hero Academia, so I really just wanted to do a build from it. If there's anything you do differently, or if there's any builds you want in the future, let me know in the comments as well. And if you want to chat more about D&D stuff, feel free to check out our Discord. But if you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button, and I'll be here helping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session, especially if you want to completely annoy your dungeon master and counterspell anything and everything that they throw at you, as Mr. Aizawa from My Hero Academia.